It is Sunday, November 19th. And 40 years ago this month, in theory, you could go into a store and buy a Timex Sinclair 2068. I don't know that they actually landed in stores in November, given some of the documentation we've seen about the manufacturing process. But certainly in theory, November 1983 was the month. And so we got a couple things we can talk about. One of the things that we have been talking about a bunch is what a next air quotes 2068 might look like. And basically, our goal here is to give Jeff a design spec, and then he'll come back a week later with a system. The other thing that I want to talk about, I want to give folks the floor for, is Ricardo Calcagno. No, that's not. Is joining us today. He doesn't usually join us because he's got better things to do on the weekend than most of us. But Ricardo, more than a year ago, started working on this project using a Raspberry Pi Pico, which is like this little single board version of the Raspberry Pi, and some other chips, and inspired by a design that somebody had done for the ZX Spectrum. He decided that he was going to make it happen for the 2068. And I think that's a good intro. Ricardo, I'm going to spotlight you. And since we've talked about you a bunch, your ears were probably burning on the weekends. And nice. We've talked about your project a bunch, but most folks have not heard it directly from you, from the horse's mouth, as it were. So tell us how you got started. What was your inspiration?
Okay, thank you, David. But you summarized it pretty much in a nutshell. This and the August meeting, I saw it recorded, says pretty much the story. But yeah, as most of us, the pandemics brought us a lot of time to develop our interests, and as we were confined, I dusted off my old TS 2068. I bought it online like 10, 15 years ago at that time. And well, I tried to do some games and loading, and I got so mad to see that there are no native storage solutions for our load machine, alas the select spectrum with the DVI-D or DMMC or those kind of things. Actually, I had a spectrum at that time, and I had a divide, which works amazingly. And so I say, why nobody ever developed something like that for our beloved machine? So I started digging around. I had zero knowledge of electronics at that time, with more than what is NIC and that kind of stuff, but absolutely no experience in circuits or whatever that is. I came across the work of a guy named Joel Coleman or something like that in the Netherlands, which in the 2000s he developed an interface for the spectrum directly connected to a PC. And I said, if this worked for a spectrum, should work for a modern environment as well. I started dealing with this. I started playing with this. I had to even install a virtual machine with a PCXD, and I emulated the serial, the interface or the parallel interface in order to get some things going. And eventually I reached Johan, and he was kind enough to point me to some directions. I had I started modifying his circuit and got to communicate eventually to the PC. But I saw the PC was not a perfect solution. At that time, I was researching about the TS Pico, the Raspberry Pi Pico, which was kind of new in the market and had a very appealing feature, which was the PIOs, programmable input outputs, which eventually started being used by many 8-bit enthusiasts to do some amazing things. So I thought about replacing the parallel port in the PC with the PIO, programmable input output on the Raspberry Pico, and that worked. That worked very well. So the next was to hijack the save and load routines, which Dr. Beep, which is the nickname of Johan, had done. I translated those to the TS, and it worked. It worked kind of good. So I published my work on at that time on GitHub, I think, and I had a post here about just exactly an hour and a year ago in November. I posted my interface. And David reached to me, and then Gustavo also reached to me, and at that time also did Tim Horner. I was in touch with Jeff like a couple of years before, and then he eventually rolled it onto the group too. Gustavo told me about this wonderful TOS extensions that he has done like 30 or 40 years ago, and he thought they will come up really nicely with the Pico, and that was pretty much it. We started as suggestion per David. We started meeting on February, is that, or March this year, and he was leading us all the way in the timelines for developing the hardware and the software, the operating system with the features we needed. And then our work started to grow. Tim, who is not present today, but gave us a really good hand in polishing some of the rough edges of my design, which was very primitive. Tim gave it some more features. Then Jeff came along and stepped in because Tim was kind of overwhelmed at work at those days, and Jeff took it on him and developed even further modification and new features. And then we came with a preliminary design, which had a 512K of SRAM, the same amount of flash memory, which holds different images. But that was in a nutshell the process, right? So what started as an idea like 3 years ago, I came with a somewhat mature design by November last year. I published, and then the rest is the history that brings us to now. I don't know how that sounds.
Yeah. Well, and Ricardo, you would email me about, I felt like about once every 6 months or
something like that.
Say to say, has anybody come up with a solution for this kind of problem? I'm like, well, no, but here's some ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. That was at the first of my journey. I said, I cannot believe. Actually, I have to confess, I was in the groups even before, I don't know, before you, while it was on Group Yahoo, I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I kept reading the emails and that stuff. But, this was one of those things you say you never have time to do. And then when the pandemic, I had time, I start digging, and I say, hey, there's got to be some way of loading a damn game into this computer other than the Tapduino or something like that. So I reach you as the responsible for the group and say, there's got to be something. And you say, well, there's got to be kind of Arduino, and you point me to that direction. But yeah, that was exactly that. I was actually, when I saw your introduction on August, I started digging and actually found the real emails I sent you is like 2 years ago. And yeah, and when you say no, there's that, this and that, and I start digging and digging, and nothing comes up, I go back to David again. And David, are you sure? Actually positive? And you say, well, Ricardo, there's this, there's that, and that was exactly the way it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this all wouldn't be possible without the spare time. You know, I had like 10 or 8 hours a day to work on this, so plenty of things to learn. I didn't know how to draw electronic circuits, so I took a chance on ECEDA, and I got my first design from there, and I could manage to print the PCBs and have them. I hand mounted them and try, and this design doesn't work. Send back to for manufacturing and all that during pandemic. So it was a very good year for me. The pandemic was awful, but was very productive. I learned things I never thought I could have. And also, I met with this bunch of extraordinary people like Jeff and Gustavo and Tim and yourself. I knew you, but not as close. And it was really a very fortunate accident, this pandemic, at least for me in that regard.
Well, and Ricardo, you and Gustavo are both in Argentina. Tim's in New Zealand, and
Yeah.
Jeff and I are in the upper Midwest of.
Yeah.
I'm on the edge of the Midwest. Jeff's in the real Midwest.
Yeah. Go talk about globalization, right?
Right.
It's really I can avoid to get sentimental on this because I see myself, as you once told me, that teenager in I live in a part of Argentina which is somewhat rural, right? It's not Buenos Aires, it's not the big cities. I live up north, and while mine is a rather large city, we are very far from all the bus in Argentina. Mostly, Buenos Aires had much bigger of a scene at those times, the 80s. Remember, of course, no communication media. There were no magazines reaching Argentina, my city. No, only software in cassettes. We could, but even then I struggled, and I remember asking myself, how does this program in the cassette goes to the computer, right? It's kind of not insane to me. And all these years later, kind of I closed my learning circle, and now I get it most of the time what's going on under the hood of our beloved TS. And it's a pleasure to be working with enthusiasts and guys who really appreciate and really all these kind of things takes us back to our years where we first interact with computers, and for most of us it even led to a work career and so much, and all started with this small little gray intrigue and mystery to me in those years.
And I don't want to say it's ironic, but we sort of heard rumors that Timex dumped a bunch of 2068s in Argentina. I mean, literally, that's what we heard. Dumped a bunch of 2068s in Argentina. And and so we had that was the sum total of our knowledge about the
absolutely.
folks in Argentina in 2068s. And even when I started doing my documentation and reading up and stuff, I just did not have any clue about how you guys were using the computers, how robust the 2068 usage might have been then. And we developed our own cottage industry. We developed disk drives and stuff, and if Willie were here, he would talk about the the John Oliver disk drive system. And a small hardcore group of folks in the US, which just sort of kept going and going and going through, like you said, like Yahoo groups, and then groups excuse me, the groups.io list. But you know,
Well, David, I want to add something there.
yeah,
I've been looking through some of the newsletters, as has Ryan, and they go for a long time. I don't know if they go all the way up to like the internet time period, but like we were looking at some, I think that were from the 93 or
yeah,
94. Like they
yeah,
go for a long time, like longer than I would have suspected. So I know we're not trying to concentrate on Ricardo's like what was going on down there, but what was going on down there? Like
yeah.
how long did you use your Timex 2068, and how many other people in your area were using it?
Yeah, well, thank you, Adam. That's a very good question, but not so much for me, but as to Gustavo, he's a real expert in TS in experience in Argentina, mainly twofold. First, as I just mentioned, I live really far away from all the buzz and fuss about the TS. We folks in Resistencia, where I live, my city, uh, we just had a bunch of guys that were on technical schools and gave me a hand. And what we did was mostly folks and trying to figure out for the very scarce information we had how this machine worked and how to mainly what we did was hacking some games and trying to move from Spectrum. And hey, you know, I did this and I play stop on the recorder when I say this and I hit break and that sort of things. Pretty much not much of that because again, this was a machine that was kind of dumped here with no main documentation. But in Buenos Aires, there were guys much informed and with much resources than here. And actually, Gustavo can tell you about the TS being marketed here in Buenos Aires. Actually, I'm in Buenos Aires right now, and there were guys much into that. Guys that did even develop some circuits here for some stuff. I cannot recall right now what, but they did a whole bunch of games transforming, and there were many things going on at this time at that time for this machine. But here in Buenos Aires, this might seem crazy, but again, in those days, 1,000 kilometers, like is 600 miles from everything, it was really hard. Again, there were no magazines,
Yeah.
no. There was very small base of people who you could ask in those days. Even less people that will pay attention to a 16-year-old that comes buzzing and bothering the guys that are working and go away. I don't know, whatever. And that was my reality at 16 or 15 or whatever. But just to summarize, I had the best memories of this machine. It was my first machine I really loved. I did amazing things with this, and with the very little things I had at hand. But was a friend of mine even designed a light switching thing. Of we were all trying to be DJs at those days, and this guy managed to not burn the TS and also did a live sequencing something without whatever and that guy was my oracle, and whenever I could I asked some things to this guy. Actually I see him today in Resistencia, and that was my main source of knowledge, right? But Gustavo can tell you pretty much a whole lot of things that were going on. This machine was in the scene at least until 88 or 89, Gustavo, is that correct?
Yes, approximately. Let me respond. How many 2068 arrived to Argentina? The count I read on a newspaper, around 5,000 is the total. But remember, many computers arrive as a passenger when the people travel to US and buy directly on the store. I don't have the idea how many of that, but there is a big market of the software in cassettes, and that's all really great in the main cities in the Argentina. And remember, after the first entry of the Timex, then the second source for the computer was Cerveni. Cerveni resell the Timex Portugal machines here in Argentina, and that was the second phase of the computer, the Sinclair Basic in this country. I don't know how many machines sell Cerveni. In this case was the Spectrum compatible machines, the 15,000 and Spectrum, both model sell Cerveni here on those years.
Nice.
So only like 5,000 2068s were sold or brought to Argentina
Yes,
officially?
apparently yes, but I don't know how many for people that travel, or I don't know, another source.
Actually, I do have one thing to take into account is many computers were smuggled into the country, right? That was Gustavo is trying to say.
Yeah.
There were, because in those days in Argentina it was very much more expensive to go to the regular channels than to go like smuggling things. For instance, my own machine was smuggled from a nearby country because it was like 1/3 of the cost. And so I don't know, maybe we could have easily like 50% more of that. I think this should be like 7,000 or 8,000 machines at that time, because there were many machines in my city. There were two machines at those days: the TI 99-4A, which was like 3 times the cost of the TS in Argentina.
Yeah.
And then the TS, and then a smuggled TS was 1/3 of the regular price, so to see. And so in my city, it was the guys that were into this computer thing. We were split like in halves. Half of the guys had a TI, and the other half was us who had a Timex. There were no Commodores. There were some Micro Digital, as Gustavo said, which is a Brazilian firm that manufacture Spectrum clones and also Apple II clones. But it was kind of later, like 2 years later. Also, at that time, in 88 or 89, Commodore started manufacturing the computers here in Argentina too. There were Commodore Dream, which was a brand here in Argentina. But that's another story. At that point, the 8-bit world was almost kind of dead because there were PC and that stuff.
So, Ricardo, give us a brief rundown, and also make sure you don't leave out the part about how I had to reprint the manual because of the new features.
Yeah. Okay. So, as so far as it is now, the TS Pico can load and save programs. We call it SLVM, which is all save, load, verify, and merge operations are supported. There is also support for some files and directory operations, which are there basically, what you can see the listing. You can also change the directory, of course. You can create a new directory. You can move to a different directory. Also, we have commands to change the mappings of the ROM. The TS Pico comes with 500K, both SRAM and dock and flash memory, which can be used to hold either ROM images or whole dock images. So in 512K, you can store 8 64K docks or 16 ROM memories, or a combination of those two, right? So you can change from one ROM set to another on the fly, right? Most of the time, the change doesn't affect the TS, but in either case, you can just reset it and get the new setting. You can also mount those cartridges on the fly too. You can start with no cartridge and mount it later. But the main goal of the TS Pico was always to have an open architecture. We have so much more in mind. We are expecting, so actually we are starting the work on the updating the flash memory directly from the Z80. So you will have supposedly, if this works, you will have a program that will store a new ROM image in a predefined slot in the flash. So you can actually modify what's in the flash. You could also load dynamically a ROM image and run it from the SRAM, from the static RAM also. There is support for user comments, right? We can actually, you will write your own commands on Python this time, and you can call those commands from the TS and get the results back. So for instance, actually there is an example we are working with Gustavo, which is we still have to polish the back and forth from and to the TS. But the idea, for instance, you send to the Pico unsorted variable, for instance, an array of unsorted values, and have it sorted by the Pico and back to the TS, sort of a coprocessor, for instance. And these commands will be completely user accessible, so the user will be able to create his comments. We will just provide the means to talk forth and back to the Pico and get the results. Also, we are planning to have some of the very good features of the Pico available to the TS. For instance, the ADCs, you could read a value from the ADC from the Pico, Raspberry Pico ADC, analog to digital converter, and read it back, and have all sorts of things to be done by the user. An example of this, for instance, is one question they asked me in Argentina is whether the Pico is going to have a Wi-Fi interface, for instance. The answer is it doesn't come with that at this point because we didn't want to delay the launch too much, but it's going to be kind of simple to add Wi-Fi for the user itself. For instance, all he has to do is have the SD card available to a different, for instance, you can use a TNC or whatever you want, and have the TNC write on the SD card, and that's it. The Pico will read it from there. This is a small example of kind of an open architecture. It's our goal for the people who are interested to modify the hardware in any way they wish, to add more components or to add whatever they deem to be useful. And also, this is the starting from new features. We were, of course, discussing some enhancement for this once it's settled and the people are comfortable using it. And it's, again, as it's based in Python and it's an open architecture, our hope is that people will tell us what features can be added, or even better, to add the features themselves. Again, we're planning to have the API open as much as possible for people to again try to modify, to add comments, to add features for themselves, and that's the main goal.
Jeff, do you want to speak for yourself and Tim with about? I mean, we've heard from you a fair bit, along the way in terms of demonstrating the hardware. You've been our hardware demo guy. But you also have suffered mightily at the end of a soldering iron.
Well, I don't have much to say about the hardware design, since essentially it's kind of a riff off of what Ricardo did. However, it was designed to be expandable and to allow people to build kits if they wish. So I'm just basically going to turn it back over to you, David, since I guess people are going to be a lot more interested perhaps in getting a demo of what this thing can actually do.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. All right, so let me-
But sorry if I can interrupt you, David.
Go ahead.
I do have a question for Jeff, because I had a private question from. I'm sorry, I don't know how should say who asked. I don't know much of the protocol here, but again, yeah, somebody asked me whether. Let me see. I'm reading literally. I am hoping to transfer some program from my Larkin disk to your system. Will I blow your card if I plug it into the Larkin interface? I usually use that connection for a thermal printer. And I say that this is a better question for Jeff, but as I understand, Jeff has some prevention, because this is also designed for people who has additional hardware and have it interact with it.
Yeah, the short answer, Ricardo, is yes, it should work, but they have to ensure that the jumpers for the not BE are properly set. But there should not be anything that the Larkin card can do that would damage the TS Pico.
Or the computer.
Or the computer, either one.
Okay.
Jeff,
Okay,
could you clear up what you said there? I didn't quite. So you said the jumpers had to be not set to, or what was that?
There's the Larkin disk drive card uses a signal that's called not BE on the Timex backplane, and what that does is essentially it makes it turns off the memory in the 2068 ROM and RAM.
Yeah.
And so if you have two cards that are trying to do that, for instance, in the TS Pico, if you have two cards that are trying to pull that low at the same time, it'll cause the computer to crash. We've implemented a method in our hardware so that if anyone else, if you will, upstream of us attempts to pull the BE line low, the TS Pico will get off the bus. And it's implemented in such a way that that collision shouldn't happen, and also it will not cause any damage to either the Timex or to any of the other cards if it does happen.
And pardon my
Yes, the idea to avoid this conflict is that the peripheral support the bank switching system created by Timex, but I not see many peripheral that support that. That is the problem. All the peripheral normally use the BE signal in a more simplest version. Okay, so that's only put the signal and that's it. And you need a big logic to handle the signal in the real life. Okay, similar case if you put two Larkin system in the same machine. Okay. In theory, you can plug any bank system in the Timex. You can put 1, 2, 3, or 4 runs banks, one and piggyback another, and you add memory, but with the 2060 schema, not with the normal schema made by the manufacturer of the peripheral on the 80s.
So is that to say that the Larkin disk system leverages the BE signal?
Yeah, Larkin does use BE.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and so does Oliger.
With any logic. You need a more complex logic to handle the BE. BE is not simple to handle.
Right, and the mechanism, as Jeff was saying, that we've implemented is if something else asserts BE on the expansion bus that these things are all plugged into, the Pico will get out of the way. Another thing that just occurred to me, Jeff, is if you pulled the jumper off of the card and put a switch on that jumper, you could physically control BE. So you could just like turn off the Pico while you're doing Larkin things, and then turn on the Pico in order to save to the SD card.
For example, if you use the Ergo disk system, the Ergo use the ROM chip select to map the operating system, and works perfectly, because when you disable the internal memory with the VE, the Pico disable also the disk system. But it's a problem with the Larkin. It's not the problem with any disk system.
And to address your point, David, yeah, we could put a switch on there. I decided to put jumpers on it because the use case with either an Airco or a Larkin is
Small.
Is not very common, and the switch would cost a bit
I was
more.
thinking like a switch with those, all electronics used to sell this kind of thing, a switch on a set of wires with the header that would plug in. Of course, all electronics doesn't exist anymore, so maybe Jameco will sell such a thing.
You're talking like a toggle switch? I mean,
yeah. Just a little
slide switch.
Yeah,
I thought maybe you had built-in logic to handle that, so it would look at the BE line upstream and say, "Oh, if somebody's trying to."
It does.
Yes,
it
but
does.
If you wanted to force it off, Carl.
Okay.
And just like physically control it yourself. There's a jumper on there that is is currently jumpered, which looks at that and will determine whether to assert or not.
That's very interesting with the BE, because like I said, that shuts off all the memory in the 26. So whatever asserts that line has to basically take over, right? So that maybe some people don't understand that. So bank enable, which is what we're talking about here, yeah, that totally shuts the ROM, the RAM. That's obviously it was intended for Timex to use that at some point in time, for their bank switching, but that never happened.
Right.
So here we have people that are taking advantage of that in their own ways, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
It's nice that Timex was forward looking like that.
For example, in my case, I use the FDD3 system created in Portugal, and the FDD3 also used the VE to disable the internal memory. And I put there the Airco controller plus the FDD3, and works perfectly, because when the FDD3 gain the machine to put the operating system, disable the Airco, because when assert the VE signal, the Airco disappear because it's put in the dock. It's very simple. That the problem is the Larkin does not are mapped into the dock.
Well, the question that comes to my mind is, if you assert BE, you're taking the video memory away, right?
No, actually, you're not.
Oh, it doesn't disable the video memory.
No, so the SCLD continues to talk to the video memory.
Right.
That is on its own.
Right.
That's on the other side of the SCLD.
Yeah.
Right.
Carl, it's
okay.
Your point is a little more subtle. If you assert BE, the processor can't access the video memory, but the SCLD happily outputs a video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know it's connected directly to the video memory, obviously, because it needs to read it. Okay.
You have a local bus in the video memory and the SCLD.
Right.
Yeah.
When you disable the memory, disable for the C80 and also the peripheral, but the SCLD has a priority to gain access to the video memory. You never lost the video. In the same way, when you access to the cartridge on the same address that the screen, you can gain access to the cartridge in the same area, and you not write the data into the screen. You not have a burgers.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that never really occurred to me, but yeah, I do know the SLD obviously is connected directly because it has all the refresh circuitry, and because we kind of mentioned that on the list here, talking about the 1500 SCLD, right? Because they went to dynamic RAM in that one as well. So I'm sure they leveraged what they were doing with the 2068 in the 1500 design. I mean, why not? It's basically the same thing. And it's connected directly as well. So that's kind of how the RAM RM line, I don't know what RM means in that case, but or maybe it's relocate memory. I don't know, but it moves the built-in RAM up to the 8000 to, you know, BFFF range. So when you plug in a RAM pack, you know, the RAM pack 16K actually moves back, you know, it takes over the normal place that the built-in memory on the 1500 would reside. So that's just, you know, that kind of design, hardware design there is interesting, because in the 1000 architecture, you can't really run machine code up that high, because the way, you know, on the 1000, it uses a CPU to generate the video, and it needs a certain memory space that it's looking at, right, for that. So anyway, interesting, cool.
Yeah. So here's the extra shoot, how do I spotlight? There we go. Here's what you see when you turn the thing on. Actually, what you see when you turn the thing on is there's a delay of, what is it, 2-ish seconds, because it takes the 2068 boots faster than the Pico. So what happens is the Pico holds reset down until it finishes booting, and then you get this display, the copyright messages with the new message. And I'll make a typo first. So what Gustavo did in terms of you know, how this thing talks to the Pico chip is he leveraged the existing save and load commands and built a little command set within there. So everything that is a Pico command is prefixed by this TPI colon. And so what this is going to do is tell us what files are on the SD card. And you can see that there's 4 tap files. And, you know, as with all things computers, array counting starts at 0. There's 2 subdirectories. I've not actually, oh yeah, I did put things in these subdirectories, but we'll worry about that later. So this, you have to imagine this as a very sophisticated cassette player, okay? So the very first thing that you have to do is mount the tap file that you want to actually run. So in this case, I'm going to tell it that I want, I hope I can spell this right, Hawk. Okay, cool. And it's, you know, this 0 OK tells you that it has mounted the file. And if I press return, you'll see that there's nothing in memory yet. And at this point, you can use the regular load, save, verify, merge commands to actually load whatever's in that tap file. But what I'm going to do first,
Before you do that, David,
yep, go ahead.
is there a way to right from right here know what's in the mounted? You know, is there a command to type here that says, tells you, hey, this is mounted, so you know? Say you walked away and you like, you know, we're all getting older. You know, sometimes I'll walk in the other room and I can't even remember why I walked in there. I'll come back and I'll be like, well, shit, what did I mount?
What state am I in? That's a very,
yeah.
So Carl, see, that's awesome. Okay, because no, I don't know that we thought of that. Did we think of that, Ricardo? Is that a thing that we don't have a way of reporting that right now?
Actually, David, if you will turn verbose on verbose true, this is not, sorry, this is a sideline, but in the configuration file, if you put verbose true, it will show the message. It doesn't show it just shows OK. but in the verbose message, it shows whether the file was mounted correctly or not.
On the 2016
On the-
screen,
No,
Or-
it's on the config file, config.ini.
right? But I'm not connected with a USB.
No. So you cannot change it in there.
Right.
The
okay.
other,
But anyway, you can create, for example, an output when you enter the
Yeah.
mounting command, that the command responds a message, okay, mounting, blah, blah,
yes,
blah.
yes,
That it could be
that's
possible. The system can support that. You can get a feedback
Yeah.
for each command.
And you know what, Carl? You could probably use the command that I just used, the tap dir command, to do this, because it'll tell you if you don't have a file mounted.
Right.
And so
The other
Go
thing,
ahead.
kind of just because I'm looking at your directory, I don't know that you have, Evie's byte back or whatever the heck she calls it. I can't even remember now, but
Backbit. It's
No.
called the backbit.
backbit, yeah, because her menu system, I think you can cursor around in, right? Isn't that right, Adam? Because you can move to the
Yeah, you can do that.
yeah, you
Sure.
can cursor around in the. But anyway, I mean, that's just maybe for the future. But it's just that way
Well-
you can pick a file to load, perhaps.
And-
But maybe I'm not really getting this. But anyway, go ahead.
No, you're
Well,
absolutely
this-
correct, Carl, because that's the beauty of this, is that, of it being an open source,
Mhm.
system, is that if you're a person that wants that, you can write that and have it do do all the things like that. For me, I prefer, the cryptic command line and not knowing what I'm looking at,
This-
and
well,
is there
this
anything
gives
actually
it-
there, right?
Yeah, this gives it a classic DOS feel, Ethan.
There you go, the classic DOS feel. And I'm not surprised by this, because this
Oh,
timeline
yes.
file is so that first row there, that first block should be a header file, and a header file should only be 19
Mm,
bytes, but you can see that this one's 54, and
mhm.
I've not even tried to test this, so I will off the top of my head try to remember that it is a save.
Correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Now you probably had to reboot it because it's now pointing it. The Pico send what he thinks is the header, and it's
Yeah.
waiting for send you the rest.
It's waiting for the computer to
for the
come back.
rest.
Yep.
You
Yep.
sorry, you have to
So I picked
re-
exactly the right file to
Yes.
bollocks up the demo. That's cool.
Is there a
Happen
reset
to-
switch on
Yeah,
the Pico?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's
That's
also
good.
one on the
And
Big Day did exactly same thing. So forward.
no, the Pico's still taking a dirt nap.
Yes,
So the reset
You
switch
need-
in this case is going to be
yeah, you have to reboot the whole
Power
system.
cycle.
It's interesting that you guys chose colors for the.
oh no,
boot screen.
that's my converter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was
so-
like,
so-
that's
Jeff designed a board that uses a FPGA to put output
right.
VGA, which I'm feeding to a VGA to HDMI converter, which then feeds to an HDMI to USB converter and onto my screen. So
Sounds simple.
And it's
So
still
simple.
clear.
The Pico doesn't have a HDMI output, right? That's only on like the bigger.
right. Yes, you're correct. It does
Okay.
not have by its own. I'm pretty sure that this one will work because this is a basic file.
So maybe at some point, maybe this could be ported over to maybe the Pi Zero, right? Which does have HDMI out. I know that's what they use in the Spectrum Next, right? To get an HDMI output. That way they don't have to deal with all the licensing issues, right?
So what they do is, the Pi Zero. Yeah, I guess it has a
It's got an HDMI, a mini, it's a, or a micro, whatever. It's a mini HDMI output. Because I know in my Spectrum Next, I put that in there and you get that's how you get HDMI video out of it. because it has all the HDMI stuff in it, so you don't have to worry about paying somebody, you know, the HDMI consortium to get a license and all that crap. But anyway, that's just
Yeah.
Actually,
you would-
sorry. Jeff is working on a video solution, I guess, that is addressing exactly those features, if I'm correct. Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah. And Jeff will have that ready next week. Just gonna have it all.
well,
ready.
you know, I'm just kind of thinking ahead a little bit of, you know, how we can get an HDMI out directly, so we don't have to start using all these converters.
Well, I'd like to see a load of tape.
Hmm.
Let's get that far.
Did you calculate the power load yet?
Um,
Those converters?
there we go. I wonder what I did wrong with the QED file then. I'll have to look at that. Okay.
Well, you're
All right.
not
No,
sharing
I'm
your
just double
screen.
checking.
Okay.
Hang on, I gotta stop my background. All this nonsense. Okay. Let me close this first.
You may want to highlight yourself again.
Oh, thank you. There we go. Okay. All right. So this is the SD card that I've been using for all of my tests. And actually, this is a good example because if there are more than 20-ish files in the directory, you'll get this little prompt here. And if you press N, it will stop. It will not go on. But if you press something else, it'll just keep scrolling. And then at the very end of the list, you do have to say that you want to end that. Okay, so I'm going to load this program Space War that Mark Fisher wrote. And Mark Fisher was active in the Capital Area Timex Sinclair user group. All right, so the 0 OK tells me that it loaded okay. And then if I do this, and if I just press enter, there's that listing. And I don't have joysticks plugged in. It's going to try to do something that involves joysticks and shooting and whatever. At this point, this is where my demo stops because of no joysticks. But we have Star Trek as well, so which doesn't involve joysticks. Shift, there we go. And we'll list the list. I don't have my keys labeled. Oh, stop. I think. Yeah, okay. That's, you know, as the Timex does, it uses the last color that you had. Musician. I think musician is the
David,
guy
can I ask you a question about that Tomahawk program that you tried to load in the
Yeah.
first instance? So I understand why it didn't load, but let's say you'd known the name of the program that was, if it like, let's say the program was called Tomahawk. I don't know if it is, but if you called it Tomahawk, like, would it have loaded it properly, or it just you can't load that program for some reason because of the header?
I think well, it's a converted from Spectrum program.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it has something magic going on.
I believe that non-standard header tell us we should look at it what kind of program it is. Maybe it has a special loader or something like that, because again, where we just focus on the standard tab files, which are files that you know are like the standard 19 bytes of headers, and then the rest. And this, as David pointed out, has 53 bytes, so it's clearly a non-standard header and a non-standard tab. So
Is
we'll
there
dig into
a
it.
way to choose the second, like the 01?
Yeah, of
So
course.
okay.
But again, maybe you won't have the header for that, right? You
Right.
saw on David's listing on the top tier that had kind of a header, which was
Yeah, it had the 00 and it had the
Yeah,
01.
but the TS loading routine won't know how to deal with the
Oh.
block, right? So
Yeah.
doesn't know what it is. It still looks for 19 byte header and it's not gonna find it in that tab file.
Yeah.
Of course,
Remember that the image, if you have the image of the game or the program inside the tab, you can load it. The problem is when the image is not on the tab file, and then you need a special routine to load. If you use the standard routines inside the ROM, works. But if you have a proprietary routine, you need to rewrite the routine and adapt to the Pico.
Of course,
If
that's
you use the
exactly right.
standard system, works. If you use any out of the standard, maybe does not work. That is the answer.
Yeah, and to Ricardo and Gustavo's point, we've tested this with standard tab files and not, we haven't.
And also, David, you can show if you use the TPI column tape and see that is in parallel the tape system plus the SD.
I could, if if I had a tape player hooked up to my 2068, but I don't. But yeah, but Ricardo, Gustavo's point is valid. So when you turn this on, by default, it will take over the load, save, verify, merge commands. But you can issue a command that says, in essence, I want to use the cassette drive, right? And so you then do a load, and it will wait until you actually give it an audio signal, through the cassette ports. So you can, in theory, if you have some, extremely valuable data hidden away on a cassette somewhere, you can finally preserve this through this means.
Yes,
this kind of brings.
You can load the program into the memory and then save to the Pico. It's very simple. You switch the input output to the tape, load the program, and then switch to the SD card and the Pico and save it. Very simple. And
conversely, you could save to tape.
Yes, exactly.
Tape. So we have a bunch of these built. Like I said, Jeff and I have been holding the proper end of the soldering iron for a bunch of days, and Jeff, Jeff, I don't think you ever want to solder an expansion board again in your life.
And I'm starting a couple new projects, so
yep.
Let's just not talk about it.
So and an expansion board is this. I don't have one handy. They're all downstairs right now. But Jeff, yeah, it has an edge. Has a little a card edge connector for plugging into the back of the 2068.
You highlight him.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Jeff. Put it in front of your shirt. There you go. Plus, it has 4 card slots in it, each of which is 62 pins. Is that right? Is it 62 or
64?
64. So 4 times 64 is a lot of pins to solder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you might want to look into, like, I used it on a board I had made for, I got a new O-scope. Rigel just came out with their 10-bit scopes anyway, and it has a logic analyzer, right, that's built into the scope.
Yeah.
And some guy came up with a, Rigel wants $400 for their probe.
Oh.
And that's a little, I mean, the oscilloscope costs more than that. I mean, just barely more than that, so it's like, here's a little probe for $200, for $400, and the oscilloscope costs $400. It's kind of doesn't make sense. Anyway, they made a BOM for JLC PCB, and you know, they can make it for you. They assemble it for you, and it was freaking cheap. I mean, you know, the board's like $2 or $4 for 5 of them, and I think to assemble them was like $9 or something like that. It was
Mhm.
it was crazy, and that was with all the parts. I mean,
Wow.
there wasn't any active part. It was all you know, resistors and capacitors, but you know,
Capacitors.
surface mount stuff. Now there was an IDC connector, right? A 50-pin IDC connector. They soldered that on there too. So that
Wow.
may be something you might want to look at, because they could do that, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll check that out. So anyway, Jeff, I cannot thank you enough for burning your fingertips. 64
Hey,
times.
I know I pre-ordered the kit, so
Yeah.
I saved you guys from that.
Yeah, okay. And so then, you know, the other piece of news is we want this thing to be you know, reasonably affordable, right? And because what's the point of making something like this if you can't buy it? And so the price point that we're thinking about right now is $79 for the Pico and the expansion board. So it's, you know, the two pieces you need if you want to go that way. The reason that you want to consider the expansion board is because, you know, Jeff is looking at building a solution that will output video, for instance. And I have a little circuit board that I'm working on that would let you plug that old General Instruments, the SPO 256 speech synthesizer chip into one of those slots, right?
Is that the one from the Speak and Spell?
No, that's
Oh.
TI.
Oh, okay.
A version of it was used in the Intellivision voice thing.
I know what you're talking about then.
Yeah. And you know, and other things, because it's a basically an expansion slot bus for the 2068. It's very similar to the John Oliger system, which also was a 4-slot design. But what Jeff did with this is he put a power connector on it so that whatever you plug in here doesn't necessarily have to be powered by your 2068. You can plug a little 5-volt power thing into the barrel connector, and on a per slot basis you can decide where that card gets its voltage from, gets its power from, which is really, really cool. And there's some other things it can do, like whether or not it's going to pass that BE signal forward to the slot in front of it, if you need that feature. So $79 for the Pico board and the expansion board. If you want to just plug the Pico directly into the back of your computer, you can do that, and it would be horizontal instead of vertical. So it would project out from the back of your computer. And that'll be less, obviously, because you're not getting the expansion slot. And you'll be able to get the expansion board separately as well. Excuse me. And if you purchase the one that the Pico that plugs directly into the 2068, and later you decide you want an expansion board, we're already thinking about how to handle that, whether it's just a swap or whether we make a little circuit board that plugs into the expansion board, and the Pico plugs into the, you know, it's just a set of fingers. It's kind of like a riser. One of those two solutions will be available. So I think that's all the stuff that we wanted to cover about this.
David, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna.
Please go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just, maybe a question was about upgrading the firmware or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so yeah, good, yeah, awesome. So it's a Pico. It has a USB-C connector on it, and Ricardo has figured out how to combine both the MicroPython and the software that does all this magic into one image. And so when an upgrade is available, it'll be up on there's a GitHub website that we've set up for this. It'll be available on the GitHub website. And if you're on the Pico mailing list, we'll send out a message through there. We'll send out a message through multiple channels. But basically what you'll do is take a USB connector, plug it into the Pico chip itself. Okay. Press. Oh, sorry. You have to press there's a button on the Pico chip that says, it's called boot select. You press that button, you plug in the USB connector, and this thing shows up as if it's a thumb drive on your computer. And you just drag that new file onto that thumb drive, and it automatically fixes itself and unmounts itself. My Mac complains every time it does this because it says, it mounted without, doing it properly or whatever. Yeah, so it's just really an easy thing to do. And as Ricardo mentioned, one of the things that he's working on and has successfully tested is being able to write to the flash chip. And so if there's like a future upgrade to the 2068's operating system, the stuff that Gustavo has done, that's a thing that potentially could go on the SD card. You can load it and program it directly from your 2068, or we'll just have a swap service where you send me a $2 and I send you a new flash chip.
That's correct. David, just one point. The connector on the Pico is a micro USB. It's a very minimal.
Oh, is it micro? I'm sorry. That's right.
Yes,
it's not C.
We were discussing the other Pico that has a USB-C, and remember, but this particular edition has a micro USB. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is, while we were talking, I tried both QED and also I tried Tomahawk in the emulator in the Cesarus, and it doesn't load. So these are two.
Oh, there must be something wrong with that QED image.
Yeah, no. I think they are non-standard loaders that even Cesar UX doesn't recognize. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. There must be something wrong with that image.
Okay. See, no, the files are okay, but they don't load. And also, again, this won't work with any kind of non-standard loader, and neither does any emulator, as far as I know. There are very few emulators that do customized load and save routine, because as you might recall, many were anti-piracy and had special saving and loading stuff going on there. So basically,
I have a question kind of related to that, and that's, I know some systems, not that this thing, this is kind of maybe another feature at some point. Once you load something into its memory, the Timex memory, you can just capture that. Mm-hmm. And that way you can create a file from that, and then you don't have to load it like a tape anymore. You can you already have the program in memory, right? There it is. Yeah. You just have to capture all the variables and whatever else it's using, but then you could just load that, right? And then that way you don't have to deal with these special loaders.
That's the other way to do it. I didn't want to bring it because that is still very green. We are still have a lot of things to go. But if you look, the Pico itself has an NMI button that will do just that. The NMI, as you may recall, is called non-maskable interruption. Sorry, my English, you probably guessed I'm not native in English. But what this button does is programmable into the ROM, and in a stock TS it doesn't do anything. But we are in the pursuit of one way of, as you say, capture the image of the TS at that particular moment, even including the registers and all that stuff, and saving it to a snapshot, to be precise, and that snapshot to be load again. We didn't want to mention that, but in the team we have been having these discussions. Actually, I do have a couple of Spectrum ROMs that do precisely this from Spectrum, that capture the status and save it to tape in those days. And my plan is to start digging a little more there and try to come up with some function. Actually, David, I think we interchange sometime saving NMI routine in one of the conversations of the group. Do you recall?
Vaguely,
So
yes.
that's something that we still have to work on, but it's on a to-do list. Yes.
Okay. Well, at least you guys have talked about it, because I know some of these gaming systems, they you can do that to save a game.
Yeah.
And then,
Absolutely.
you can go and play it, and
Absolutely.
you die too early, and then you can just go back to where you
That's-
were and try, that way you don't have to start all over from scratch,
That's
right?
exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
You kind of
exactly.
have the game saves. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
in the Spectrum world, there's a format, the snapshot format.
Yes, absolutely.
For that.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
We
so
are
it's-
trying to do that too, but not in this release, but it's on our to-do list.
Yeah. And Carl, Gustavo has a long list of really cool commands that he wants us to implement.
Right. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and so I should say, one of the ones that I'm kind of interested in is capturing printer output. Right. Gustavo has talked to us about this and has some really, really cool ideas about not just, emulating a 2040, right, but getting a full color screen saved as a bitmap file or something like that.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
The other thing too, just kind of, guys gonna hate me, but say
No,
you put
no.
right. Say if you put a cartridge into the 2068, is that would be kind of cool to be able to capture that image straight from the cartridge and put it into into the flash. That way you have, I know you can get a doc file, but this would be just hey, I have this cartridge, I just want to copy it onto the TS Pico and be done with it, right? I don't have to go find the, they're not that hard to find, but I'm just saying that might be a kind of an interesting feature, since you guys are kind of already
Right. Otherwise, you'd have to dig out your States and Capitals cartridge every single time.
I know. I know. And how hard that is? I have to go all the way to the basement to get that cartridge.
Is that as far as doc files? Was there any support for that, or?
Well, regarding to car, this question is better answered to Gustavo. I guess I'm not qualified to answer that. And the doc files in this particular release are not supported as per se. The TS Pico comes with 4 cartridge images for you just to try the functionality of that. That's it. But as David mentioned, there is every plan in order to support DCK, we have to support writing to the flash, right? And that part is, we have some advances, but so far it's not mature yet as to release it on this version.
okay.
As far as we can nail that down, we will be able to support DCKs and save them right into the Pico. I was working on this like Friday, I guess, and I managed to successfully erase all the flash and go back safely to the TS, which was a very necessary first step. And since this involved timings, for instance, I had to wait 18 milliseconds between each sector to be erased. I managed to do that successfully, and it worked. So right now, what we can do is erase the flash, and then we have to start putting the bytes on it. But it's encouraging because we already done this bytes recording onto the flash. It works last time. So I think we're not so far. I don't want to scold the devil on this, but I don't want to jinx it. But we've been having some progress in that area.
So what's the SRAM for on the, is it just to simulate the Timex memory since you're using bank
Well,
enable to?
Very, very good question. The SRAM is there for two reasons. One, to support like temporary ROM files. Suppose you're developing something on the ROM and you want to try it, just don't want to save it to the flash yet. The idea is you can write it on the SRAM and boot it from the SRAM. You can boot from the SRAM. And the other, of course, you could mount there a dock cartridge too. Your idea of mapping a real dock into the SRAM will be something we had to look into. But the other idea is to have that as a full RAM in the dock that could allow you to potentially, for instance, you could run, for instance, CPM there if we can develop the routines. Gustavo had made some progress there, but basically you can map that SRAM both as a ROM or XROM, and also you can map it as a dock. Actually, you could map both things at the same time. You can map one block of the SRAM to be a ROM, and the other block arbitrarily to be a dock. And you can go from there to whatever you want to do. One idea was to use that ROM, that dock SRAM mapping feature for, again, storing data or even trying to run CPM from there.
Yeah.
But again, this is all work in progress. Is too green.
Right. Right.
Carl, the Larkin RAM disk used it mapped its RAM into the dock space. And so a lot of the reason that there's SRAM on there is because I want a RAM disk.
Okay, that's a short answer. Yes.
The other thing too is you could build a cartridge that used flash or whatever, and you could program your own crap into it, and not even use the Pico. You could just boot it straight from the cartridge port, right?
Very true. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really flexible. Like you're not even you're not even required to use to put a Timex operating system into the flash, right? You can talk directly to the Pico using out and in commands. So, and you can use that. I mean, that's sort of what's happening under the hood is the load and save and etc. That all uses the out and in to talk to the Pico and back.
So does the horizontal, what do they call it? The horizontal register for, which chunks are on, is that still in effect when you pull bank enable, when you activate bank enable?
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing is, for instance, assume you want to address, I don't know, suppose you use sorry if I'm may I explain it, David?
Yeah, go ahead.
Assume you want to use the full SRAM 512K for dock, RAM dock, for instance. So you say, I want to map chunk 5 of the 5th dock SRAM, and I want to map chunk 6 from the 3rd block. You can do that, just that. And you can map whatever you want from whatever dock you want to do. All you have to do is tell the Pico to map which one of the 8 SRAM docks you want to be active at a point. And then you use the horizontal serial register to use the chunk you want to use. I actually, Jeff and I were trying this, and you can move from block to block and in different chunks. You have a different value stored in there, and the TS shows the same information each time. But for a test, when we were trying with Jeff, I think Jeff, we do it poke, I don't know, 33,000 with 100, a value 100 in one dock. And then we move to the other dock and we put 200 there. And we could read the 100 and do 200 coming back and forth between those two dock SRAM. Am I making any sense to you guys?
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
And as a bonus, they were in the docks that you intended them to be.
Yes, absolutely.
So the Pico basically handles the I/O ports there to handle the not only the horizontal shift register, but probably bit 7, right? And FE
No.
or whatever it is for the dock for the XROM.
No, actually the Pico doesn't mess with the horizontal shift register. All the Pico does is you tell the Pico what bank in which memory you want to map when there is a home or XROM access, or either when there is a dock access. The Pico is constantly monitoring the bus, and the Pico doesn't know anything about ports or anything. When he sees a low address access for 16K, it goes and see what bank it is mapped to that access, and goes and presents that block from the SRAM or from the flash to the bus. And in the next access, the Pico sees a dock access. It presents the whole 64K for the block you set on the flash or the SRAM, and presents that to the bus, right? So basically, that's all the Pico knows. You have to tell from the TS what to use. Actually, there is a command that says TPI memdoc or memboot, and you say use this block from this memory, either SRAM or flash, and the Pico keeps doing that until you change it, right? That's in a nutshell.
And Carl, just to let you know, the Pico does monitor XROM and ROS chip select, so it knows if you're trying to look at dock or at the XROM.
Okay.
So it does use HSR. Well, actually, it does use HSR and bit 7 at FF by monitoring the two bus signals.
Gotcha. Okay.
The idea is you plug in the Pico into the 2068 and you need more peripheral or more or extra hardware. With the Pico, you have dock, you have XROM, you have all the resources in a single board. And also with the all command built in into the memory. That is the most important part. You no need to load any drivers or any program or nothing. You just only use a keyboard, and that's it.
Right. Well, hopefully you guys make a technical manual for this thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because, but again, what we wanted to do, as Gustavo said, is to keep it at the lowest possible level. You don't have to use a special program. You can develop those programs later in BASIC, in machine language. Actually, Gustavo, I'm sorry, Gustavo, I'm gonna spoil your story, but what Gustavo is working so far, again, may aim at what you mentioned, Carl, which is a technical advanced user. Gustavo is working in an API application programming interface, which basically you can type the commands on the TS. You can say save TPI or whatever, or you can call Gustavo's API, right, in order to do the block switching or even calling the low level routines, right? Gustavo is working interfacing those routines to machine language or BASIC. So basically what you will have is the plain hardware, a couple of function calls, an API to access the more advanced function. But it's up to you there, whatever you could also replace, as David was telling, you can actually replace all of the load and set routines. You can do whatever you wish with the system. That's our goal. We don't want to tie people to to our solutions. We want this to be exploring and adding new functions as you wish.
Let me introduce you
Hey, Gustavo.
on 85, when a very new user of the machine, I create those extension, the TPI extension for the basic. I rewrote the ROM operating system and create my own version of those commands. And I use this interface for many, many years. And according to this event for the 40th anniversary of the launch of the Timex, I decided to introduce my TPI commands to the firmware at the Pico. That's why you have a ton of expansions commands. But actually, the most important command is save, load, verify, and merge. But you can, for example, run the directory, the change directory, or many commands that at the moment is supported, but is not rated on the Pico, inside the Pico, but is supported by the ROM, but is not supported inside the firmware of the Pico.
Right. Hey, Gustavo.
Yeah.
We only have about half an hour left, and I want to jump to other topics. I didn't expect it to take this, to be this in depth.
Well, it's been enjoyable. So,
hey, Tim, are you there?
Tim,
let's see if Tim is still there.
You mean it's Tim?
Yes, Tim.
Tim Swenson?
Tim Swenson.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tim, you managed to unload most of that stuff, and it's not taking up room in your house anymore from the bill.
Yep, Mil-Merit collection. Yeah, most of it is now gone.
Okay.
Especially computer systems. So I mean, there's a few things left. I'd send out an email last night with an update. But the main thing you may want to know is what the current balance is for the fund for the group. You guys ready?
Lay it on us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drum roll.
$2,321.
Jesus Christ.
So that can be used, I think, however the group wants to use it. It's either to help with the archiving or to pay for any of these new, if someone proposes a new project and needs some initial funding to buy parts for testing or whatever, that's what could be used for that. However the group wants to use it. That's money for everyone to use. So
you're officially the treasurer then, right?
Actually, I'm going to send the money to you probably.
Bail out as fast as you can.
But I've got the funds. I think there's a few more people pinging me, but it's nothing big dollar items. But I got my initial $300 back easily.
Yeah, good.
So, and like I said, everything else goes to the group, and however the group wants to spend it. But that's a good fair chunk of change to fund something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And
curiosity, how many chips did you have to take to the post office or UPS or whatever?
I think so far about 3.
That's it. Very good.
Well, they had a couple big days where I was dropping off like maybe 15 boxes or units to going out. So maybe a little bit more, but no, there was, I think I tried to do UPS. So I found Pirate Ship, which looks like it gave you discounted shipping. They did a lot of UPS stuff. So a lot of stuff went there. A few boxes to the post office. I'm thinking so far maybe total of 30 boxes shipped out, boxes, packages. I mean, if someone wants a 2040 printer, that's one box because it's boxed. You want a QL, that's a box QL, that's another box. So I didn't combine those things into big boxes. So
okay.
I think somebody had like I go to order a couple of printers and some, that sort of stuff. So
well, Tim, thanks for doing all of that. I mean, first of all, going and picking the stuff up and then spending all the time to get it shipped out.
Yeah, definitely.
Luckily, I had the free time. I don't know if you guys heard, but the day before, 2 days before I picked the stuff up, so I thought I'm going to be picking up on a Thursday. We actually picked up on a Friday. the day before on a Wednesday, I got laid off.
Oh,
So I had lots of ample time to do this stuff. So
wow. Well, sorry to hear that.
well, I got some severance package. So I'm doing okay. I got some resumes out, so we'll see what happens. But I've been, and I think I spent the first day I shipped, I probably spent about 6 hours, even going through and packing everything, getting addresses, boxing things up. I didn't want to just put labels on a let's say you bought 2400 printer in a box. I don't want to put a label on that box. So I actually wrapped it in brown paper, shipping stuff. And then pirate ship was nice. I print out the label, slap it on. At first I actually addressed everything, then did the show. Oh, look, I didn't need to do that because that comes up with its own shipping label. So made it a little easier. And then drop them things off to the UPS store. So I think the first batch I sent out last week, everyone should have. Second batch, I think, was Thursday or Friday. I think a few more things went out yesterday. So
Cool.
Yeah, and I kind of know, I got a 2050 from you, and I've never seen, or that I can recall, the 2050 modem is actually labeled Timex Sinclair 2050, which this one is. It's like serial number 22, which is kind of, and I didn't even think Timex sold any of those because, they pulled out of the market.
Are you sure it doesn't say Westridge 2050?
Sure.
It says Timex Sinclair 2050.
Carl, we're gonna
on
need
it.
it. You're gonna have to take some pictures. Seriously.
Yeah.
Because
Because all the ones I've ever seen were, they pulled the labels off and put Westridge 2050 on there. And this one actually said, the label on it is on the front, Timex
I don't look
Sinclair
that close then.
2050.
Whoa.
I still have some more of those that are uncased. They're just empty.
Yeah,
There's
right.
even like one or two that don't even have the connectors. So they're just bare boards. No idea where Bill got these. I think he got the Exitron drives because Exitron was local, and I think I saw him do some work for them. Where was the Westridge modems made? Were they
Out
Bay
there.
Area?
Anchor Automation was the ultimate maker.
Where are they located?
Oh gosh, I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay, because he might have gotten it through some others.
Right.
Some of the material came from another collector that he got the their cast offs basically. I think a lot of them from somebody.
Because I think you had two 2050s that were in cases, right, in the case.
Yes.
Obviously, I got one of them, and I don't know who got the other one, but it'd be interesting to see if theirs says Timex Sinclair 2050 on it.
No, I'm pretty sure it just said Westridge because I remember looking at that one. So
interesting.
Because I was like, I don't think Timex ever sold them.
No.
You know what I mean? I've never seen a box, like a box that would be on the shelf of the 2050 modem. I can't even remember.
Press releases, they were promising the modem. Oh, it'll be out next month.
Right.
Never actually got it finished to ship, and then they'd be like, February. They're like, oh, sorry, we're done.
Yep.
See you later.
That's what I remember.
The Westridge folks, or whoever it was, actually had a couple pre-labeled, ready to ship out the door. You go, what, you're quitting? What? And then got rid of them.
Yeah, like I said, this serial number is 22, so it's definitely an early run.
Some of the bare boards were sold as the basis for an RS-232 interface.
Right.
Yeah.
My modem also say Westridge 2050. But if you read the documentation for Timex, the Westridge use two I/O ports. And if you see the documentation, the internal technical document for Timex allocate 4 ports for the modem. I assume that the modem created or thinking by Timex is different than the Westridge cell. Maybe the Westridge is the 1000 model adapted to the 2068. It's not the original thinking for the 2068.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I know you can use the modem on both, right? Because it has a TS1000 connector on it.
Yep.
Even this 2050, it's got a TS1000 connector on it. So, but yeah, I've just never seen one. That just kind of popped in my head. Is like I was looking at it. It's like, damn, it says Timex Sinclair 2050 on it. I'll be
Can't
damned.
get some pictures. I did scan the covers and back covers of some of the books that David didn't have pictures of.
Yep.
So that I sent those to him because I'm like, oh, I've got this. I might as well, scan it. Took a pictures of a few pieces of hardware, I think.
Yeah, there was a real-time clock module that was made for the 1000 that you took some pictures of for me.
Okay. And then there was that Damco Spectrum ROM.
Yep.
That fits on the back extension. That
Yeah,
actually got shipped out.
Yep, that's the twister that goes with the Damco sold the
Wafa drive?
Thank you. Yes, the BSR version. And with that twister board. Yeah. Cool.
Is that the twister board or was just oh, okay.
It's a ROM and a twister. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it went to someone who bought a Wafa drive.
Which is perfect.
I think that went out just recently. So I went to Carl. So he's got, I also sent him a bunch of the Exotron spare drives.
Yeah, thanks.
He's got the world marking on those.
Well, I know too, I also noticed that, there was supposed to be an A&J for the 2068, and there is one that's in like a case, and I can't remember what it says on it, but the one I have for the 2068, it uses a later mechanism, like I was talking to you before in the other meeting, that uses a different tape, right? It uses a newer tape. Doesn't use the real thin, the skinny tapes that the original,
the dark one.
Right. It uses, I guess you were saying the Wafa drive uses the same it's a thicker tape, cassette. But none of those drives that I got were of that, didn't have that mechanism in it. I mean, the casing, was similar to the one I have. It was the same, it looks like to me. But the cassette, the mechanism is obviously for the Exotron, the original Exotrons.
Carl, didn't you get a Wafa drive?
I did not. No, I didn't get that one.
I thought you did because I shipped you the Spectrum, the Damco thing. All right. I still have a Wafa drive, so let me write a note.
Do you have well? What does it look like? I don't know if I know what the Wafa drive looks like.
It's the one that's black with the Spectrum coloring on it.
Yeah, it's an all black housing.
Well,
I
go
have
ahead.
a question regarding the twisted board with the Spectrum ROM. If you have this adapter, when you need to disable the internal ROM memory, you disable also the adapter memory when you receive the ROS chip select signal?
So looking at the Damco interface, there was a physical switch on it. So I'm assuming that you turn on or off the Spectrum ROM. Other than that, I don't know much about it.
Okay, but maybe replace the internal ROM or change the Timex ROM by the external EEPROM. But I don't know if receive the bus, the signal, okay, disable the ROM. Like, for example, you need to connect an interface 1 on those twister, and this works or not. Because you need disable both. You need disable the EEPROM plus the internal ROM. When the interface 1 say, okay.
But no, this twister is not for the interface 1. It's only for the Rotronics Wafa drive.
Ah, okay.
And it has no, the Wafa drive has not, I think it has a small ROM chip in it, but it doesn't have very much smarts.
So all your stuff just shipped out recently.
So the chip is like me.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, if nobody got the Wafa drive, maybe maybe I should get that, but I think somebody got it.
There were 3 of them, 3 Wafa drives. I still have 1 left.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were 3 Wafa drives.
Okay. I've never,
2.
maybe
Yeah, I've
just
got 1
haven't.
spare.
All
I've
right.
got 1 spare Wafa drive. I also have another Wafa drive in pieces. which, so we'll talk offline, Carl.
Okay, because I also
You need
noticed the
to,
1000, you said the ANJ
Or just wait
1000
to see what
drive.
you get, and then,
Yeah, it was in the box. That one's actually
yes, that's
really,
the
really
box one.
late. Yeah, that's a late model. That's like 1985. I'm like, wow, that's pretty late for a ANJ 1000 drive. I mean, it's actually in a 2000 case, you know, what the 2000 drive is in, and it talks about it, and they got a sheet that says, you know, I guess they were using the Memotech cases
okay.
for the interface, and they quit making those, so it's just a bare interface card, and they tell you, you know, hey, don't spill water on it or touch metal on it, you know, and stuff like that. And that, and it does have a ROM on it. Yeah, even the 2000 has a ROM, but I don't know exactly what the ROM, you know, interfaces to. Obviously, it probably takes over the
Yeah.
you know, the load and save commands and kind of intercepts those.
Carl,
Maybe
that's that code. That ROM is what Clark Calkins. I don't know if you were here for his when he was on, but that's what he worked on, and the guy who did Tiny Basic, whose name escapes me right now. Anyway,
Wait, David, can I ask you? You brought up so there's a Tiny Basic that's already been ported to the 2068.
no. The guy, there's a guy who's partially responsible for a Tiny Basic, and his name
The
escapes me.
original?
I think maybe. Hang on, I'm getting
Well,
there.
it's okay. I don't want to take this off topic. We can come to that later.
Not Dennis Allison, but somebody else. Anyway, he worked with Exatron to develop that operating system for the
okay.
Exatron floppies.
And I just want to throw it out there too. I don't know if anybody, like for the 2000 version of the ANJ microdrive, you could actually have a parallel printer port. There was a parallel printer port also built into that, but you needed to have the ROM plugged into the interface port. And I don't think mine has the parallel stuff. So I don't know if there's a, you know, probably not a copy of the ROM that they use for the parallel port stuff, because it's got a separate socket in there, if I recall right, for the parallel port.
The 2000 version had two interface connectors, so you can have two drives.
Two drives.
Parallel. I found the parallel cable, so that's also on your way to you, Carl.
Okay.
So a lot of the loose stuff I had running around. I'm like, hey, Carl's a hardware guy. Let's throw it in his box.
And I know I haven't opened up the one that I got from you, because that is a TS or that AJ 2000 interface. I just don't have the drives, the 2000 drive, unless, you know, I don't know if the old ones will work with it. I don't know.
I think it's the same pin out.
I think that
yeah. So you can just plug the box into the interface.
Carl, can you see this picture here?
I see that. Yeah.
Li Chen Wang, who did that Tiny Basic and worked with Exatron. This is a picture of his ROM. This is, I believe, for the Model 1, but you know, the code would have
yeah, because I know Tim sent me two bare boards. I think that's what I'm looking at. I have two bare boards. There's nothing on them. They're just bare. But
yeah, I sent a lot of things to a lot of folks, so I can't remember exactly. But I still have one WAFA drive and at least one Exatron drive, and then some, which I thought might have been for the Tandy, and then some cable with like a ribbon cable with an Exatron something in the middle. So I can go get it if you want me to show it to you. But all fails, I may just start shipping stuff to Carl.
Here we go.
Well, I'm gonna get a letter of complaint from his wife. She's gonna be like, "What? Where is this Tim fellow? Where's he live?"
Yeah, how do I get to Tim's house?
Far enough away.
Well, I've used the ANJ. I think Art must have got some from them, because I know I used them, when I was developing that diagnostics ROM, right, or diagnostics cartridge, because I certainly didn't use tape.
Okay.
It was all. That's why I don't have the tapes for that, because I don't think they were ever on tape. It was all
Exatron.
on the A&J 2000 version.
Okay.
That's the drive I was using. So, and I had to give all that back when I
Wow.
was done. So, but I know I saw the 1000 version too that he had. So that's why when I got that box from Tim, it's like, wow, this is really similar, but the drive is newer. The physical drive is in the 2000 versions box,
Yeah.
right? And the interface is there, and you put, I guess maybe those tapes came with it because it was like, Bill had some stuff in there where he was, prices for it and stuff like that, and I guess they got it through a user group buy. So it was cheaper. I think he bought like 5 of them or something like that, and he got a cheaper price. But anyway, yeah, the A&J stuff, it's a little nostalgic for me because I used them, and so yeah, I mean, if you want to send that stuff, that's fine. I certainly don't mind it.
Hey, real quick, Tim, you're gonna try to work on a timeline for Timex.
More than that, so I don't like to announce things before I get them mostly done, but we'll talk about it.
Okay.
So basically, someone mentioned timeline recently, and it sparked interest in me. I like doing research. I like doing history. I like computers. So I want to work on a document that covers the entire timeline of Timex Computer Corporation.
Cool.
Not too detailed, where it's like, oh, this is kind of boring, but detailed enough. And I work with David because he's got all of the material. He knows what's available. I just spent yesterday going through Sync magazine timelines, Timex Sinclair user, all much as they in there. There's a lot of documents online that they were stuff they were planning to do, so that could be part of it.
George,
I read the 2 Sinclair books, the Sinclair story and Sinclair and the Sunrise Technology, that talk about how so I think it's really documented well is that Timex actually was the second source for the ZX80, not just the ZX81. There's the ZX80. So eventually it'll be I'm thinking it'll probably make 20-30 pages thereabouts, maybe more if there's pictures. And so it'll take a bit of time to work on, but I think it'll be interesting to do it. And again, I'll ping David on it to help me on this because he's got knows where things are. As we come up with questions, maybe I'll generally put questions out to try and find sources of our information and try and get original oh yeah, this happened. Well, okay, where's that documented? So,
and this would eventually go onto David's site, or this would be an actual just paper document, or not a paper document.
It'll be a published document. Yeah, go on David's site. It'll go on my site. It'll be Creative Commons license. If anybody's been on my website and looked at the Ogre document, it's something like that. That was hey, wouldn't it be nice to have this nice history document of this? So I went and did it, and that turned out to about 90 pages and took about a year to do.
Yeah.
So this might take about less time, but it'll take I'll take my time up and just rush it out and get it done.
I know Ryan's kind of into the when did the 2072 to 2068 name change happen, and when did they cancel the 2048, right? Because that was obviously in the works, and of course all the TS 2000 stuff, right? Because I think the name change came so late that most of those books and things were already kind of written and done, and so they just called it.
What I find or remember too was just, I think, sure, lots of those things got started early, probably before they had nailed down the exact product numbers. But also there was lots of talk, and I was seeing in some of the newsletters of the mention of the 2000 series. Like, it was known that there was planned for multiple things, and so it always just felt like, okay, well, that's just a generic term to all the computers. And as obviously later at some point they dropped the 2048. What I noted in things I read was that they were talking about the 2048 and the 2068 together. So the 72 had already been renamed at that point, but the 48 not dropped, obviously. And so obviously that came later. So up until probably late, when the 48 was dropped, it was known there was going to be a multi-machine group. And certainly before the proper 2000 reworking into the 2068, 2048, those references are probably to the actual 2000 machine itself. But that was, you know, very early and just a prototype thing. So I was just noticing these things, and I've been trying to keep a timeline document that I need to put some more references in. That's what I was working on actually, and I was going to send to Tim. I didn't know he was going to go off into quite an ambitious effort as that. So I can certainly send that on if it's of any help.
Sure, sure. Again, this would be a group project. I'll document about, you know, who has helped. And then at the end, it'll be Creative Commons licensed and just something I think it'll be fun to do for me. Like, I
Yeah.
probably spent way too much time yesterday on it, but it was raining, so I had the time. I want to say maybe 6 or 8 hours doing research, going through. And what I decided to do, previously what I would do is I would get an article from some magazine, print it out. Well, now what I'm doing is actually annotating it into a Word document so that the end result can be the research document with all the original information and the actual document to read. So,
And I think a lot of that finite information, you know, not finite, the granular information you're probably going to have to find in some of the newsletters, right? Especially the bigger user groups, the ones closer to Timex, you know, probably up there in the Northeast, and then maybe obviously
the
some of the
Boston
ones.
Computer Society, yeah. I
Yeah.
did notice. So I did find David pointed me to some press releases. I know some I'm reading, like, this looks awfully familiar. I think a lot of the newsletters, news groups, newsletters just basically echoed from the press release.
Mhm.
Well, you
Uh,
saw that the one that I think I mentioned was that clearly they were having being fed something either from Timex reps or just rumor that, for example, the 1500 having bank switching that
Right.
obviously never happened. So I don't know where all that was coming from.
Hey, real quick, since we only have, in theory, 5 minutes left, and some people will want to ditch in the next 5 minutes. Our next meeting is Monday, December 4th at 9 p.m. And perhaps we can actually talk about that 2068 next ideas going forward. One of the other things that we talked about in the groups is using the 1000 largely for robotics, and you know, I would love to hear if anybody ever explored that, you know, within our group. And then one of the other things that really interests me, because and Adam as well, is role-playing games on the 2068, you know, in terms of what was available. And Adam's question was kind of fortuitous, because I have this thing I backed a Kickstarter a while back for a game called Notorious, which is a solo sci-fi tabletop role-playing game for one player. And the way it's designed is it uses all of these tables, and I think it's all B6 based. So my belief is that it would lend itself well to a conversion to, you know, program written in BASIC. And so I had started sort of sketching that out in you know, in a text editor a while back.
And that was before I brought up the RPG.
It was several months ago, actually. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I'll see if I can show that. Let's see this camera. I'm turn off my background, don't I? So here's that book. And as you can see, you know, sci-fi-ish, you know, guys that look like bounty hunters, and that's basically what you're doing. Is from my recollection of reading this, is that you're given this sort of, you know, bounty hunter-esque assignment, and you go through and, you know, somehow capture somebody or do whatever. So there's that.
That's the paper RPG solo.
Yes, yeah, it's a solo game. Yeah, and there's
'Cause there
actually an
were a
expansion
number of
coming out.
solo ones. The couple that were solo ones for the fantasy trip back in the 80s. And I know that God, who was it? Flying Buff. There was a
Flying Buffalo.
another role-playing game that was aimed a lot at solo work. Might have been from Tunnels and Trolls.
Oh, was that solo? Okay. Okay.
But my
Early
problem
days,
with
that's
Tunnels
in
and Trolls,
1970s.
yeah, Tunnels
Yeah.
and Trolls had a problem is their spells were like the control spell was called Yatha Massa. You know, like you read this and go, okay, I'm done.
Okay. All right. You had me for a second there, Tim.
But so I actually had a copy of Tunnels and Trolls and handed it up. Not for me. So I was kind of collecting a lot of RPGs for a while, cheap, because I'd get them discounted or the go to the conventions and go to the flea market section and buy things there.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of these sort of solo RPG things, but this Notorious one looked like it would lend itself well, and that maybe the artwork could be somehow converted a little bit, similar to what Adam has done in the Valley Alley world.
Oh, so no one will know what you're talking about there. but
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, if you get the storage device going, you can basically store the artwork as JPEGs or whatever, or GIFs,
Yeah.
and just load them from storage.
Yeah. Because it's not tape, it'll be so much faster.
Yes, and so you just doesn't matter how much, it just loaded direct to the screen. You got infinite amount of storage space. Well, not infinite, but a lot to load up images. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So Adam, I don't know, are you interested in programming in BASIC on the 2068?
Oh, I don't know. Ryan and I have actually talked about the use cases that are going to be used for this device that we were talking about with the Pico earlier in the meeting, and how many people will actually be saving to the device rather than loading from it. And we were wondering, what's the percentage of people who actually will use it for that? I mean, we don't know,
Right.
but I mean, not very many, I suspect,
Well, yeah, right. I think that the use case for people saving is also the same size as the use case for people who want a RAM disk.
100%.
It's a very small group of us.
For those that don't have practice, I used my A&J 2000 alongside the Oliger, both at almost the same time. But back and forth, I could transfer files.
What did you use to switch back and forth, Paul?
The A&J micro drive.
Yeah, how did you
2000? And
how did you switch?
Just use them in parallel.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Different commands.
Oh, okay. And so they would kick in their own ROM based on their own schemas.
Yeah, on the flags that were sent to it or triggered.
Okay, cool. So Carl, you'll be ready to do show and tell, right? Next week?
We will see.
Next
We will
meeting
see.
or the one after?
Thanksgiving's coming up, so there might be some time off there. I got some projects. Like I said, I wanted to do that 1500 that's silver, right? And I actually want to make a 2000 in a 1500 case, right, with the black, because I have to get a Spectrum keyboard and all that kind of thing. But anyway, just they're irrelevant as far as reality is concerned, but it'd be nice to have a physical.
We know, Carl, I find it awfully suspicious that you have a Timex Sinclair 2050 modem, and you're the person who wants to make all of this hardware that never existed before.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was surprised when I saw that that label on there. I was like, I don't know that they ever made any, that said Timex Sinclair on them. I'm sure they did. They probably were in the warehouse getting ready to be shipped out, but yeah, that's.
Well, I was actually kind of surprised that there weren't, as you just said, is that surely they must have had some labeled that way already.
Right. And like I said, all the ones I've seen, even back then, in 84, they said Westridge. Because, I mean, there was the story on it, right, that Timex was ready to come out with them, and they folded, and Anchor Automation decided to sell them anyway. Oh yeah, that's another thing.
So, but it's a, let me just
Yeah.
spotlight this real quick here. So to your point, Carl, they made, Timex made a lot of labels, it seems, for things, and
Right.
it's kind of hard to tell, but this one is it's a real thin label, and you can it's got a sort of puckering to it, the way that it's
a dome to it.
Well, no, it's got a convex curve. Like I said, it's real hard. It's because I think whatever the plastic on top of it has shrunk at a different rate than maybe the paper underneath, right? So it's
Right.
curling, right?
Are those
Aren't
original?
But
didn't
this
we
one,
figure the
this one's
the
perfectly
thin
flat.
ones were for the 1000 kind of cutout? Those were meant for the 1000 shaped prototype.
Right. That's what
And the-
what my suspicion is that these
Right.
were, these are clearly, iterations of labels that they were thinking about using for the
And as I mentioned, to you, David, that I would like to get one of the black ones, or maybe two of them. I don't know if you want to give, take that away. So many, you only have 4 of them, but because I do want to make at least 2 of the 1500s in the 1000 case, and I think the black on silver instead of the silver on black would be kind of cool. But
and
anyway,
maybe that's why they were black, because they, but it's hard to say. I mean, I don't
yeah.
have any documentation about this, at all.
And like I said, I can, I had a sheet I made decades ago where I scanned in a 2068 one, or one of the real labels, and I just copied them. I made them the right size, and I copied. There's probably like I don't know 50 labels on that sheet that I have, but I went in there and edited it so that I made like a 2000, a 2010, 2020, 2030, 2040, 2050. So I mean, they're already pre-made. I just need to print them out on a adhesive paper, and then I've got clear spray that you can spray on the paper, right? So it's sealed. They won't. And so I've used that years ago to put labels on different things, but I haven't done that in recent memory. But that's kind of what I had planned to do with the 1500, right, and the 2000, right, when I make that. So I have that, but those aren't original stickers, like those are. Those are real physical stickers.
Right.
And the other thing too is kind of, since we're on the 1500 thing, is the ROM. I sent some pictures in the list.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw those.
Yep.
Because
drawer.
Yeah, because what's his name had an earlier one, an early 1500, and has a Hitachi. Yeah, it has a Hitachi ROM on it.
But
and
it's
the later one
part that is what.
Yeah, and the 6-digit after it is the same on both the later one, because it says Timex Sinclair, or copyright Sinclair, copyright Timex, kind of like like in most of the 2068s.
Yep.
Yeah, they have. I don't know who made those particular chips, but they don't have the 338, right? The date code's right before it, but the 810, whatever the other digits are, they're the same.
Okay.
So it's obviously the same ROM. But anyway, yeah, if you can find some, that would be. Then I have to modify the socket, because I think an EEPROM doesn't have the same pin out as those. Yeah, I'm gonna have to hack it in there. But and to Ryan's point, well, we talked about it on the list that there's no real difference between the ROMs, other than the cartridge, where the RAM check was. They kind of fudged that up and put the cartridge check in there. And there's no ports or anything on the SCLD that I know of. I don't think it's possible. There might be some ports there that you could talk to it, but I don't really think it changes anything other than what we already kind of mentioned with the RAM RM signal line, right, where it would actually
moves the memory.
Yeah, it would relocate the built-in RAM higher in memory.
Yeah.
So you could have 32K, because they definitely talk about that in the manual, and in the 1510 manual. Talks about using you can use the RAM pack on a 1500. You
Mhm.
have to use it really on a 1000 because you have to have the 16K for the cartridges. You
Right.
can't just plug the 1510 into a 1000 and start loading cartridges. You don't have enough RAM.
I was
Well,
just
don't
looking
forget
oh,
don't forget the extra bugs the 1500 ROM adds.
yes.
Yeah, and then there's other people that talk about that. It made its own new bugs
Yep.
because of that. So
Very true. Very true. Well, we've wasted another 2 hours.
Not wasted.
Adam, do you have your book club?
Oh no, I've stopped going to that ever since I went to the hospital.
Okay.
It's hard for me. I'm not driving now, so
Oh, okay.
so no.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, in case Carl, in case anybody missed it or Carl missed it, I was just gonna say again, I was gonna hang out in the Discord chat if anyone's interested.
Yeah. Lewis set up this awesome Discord chat, and we'll have to figure out a way to make that well known.
yeah, and you don't have to install really anything either. It can run right through the browser. So
Right through
that's
the
kind of
browser.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So hang out with Ryan and Adam. Are you gonna be there?
I'm not sure. Valerie and my wife and I might do something after this. Yeah, not sure.
What?
Oh my God.
It sounds like Jeff will be there though.
I did have one final question because we ended up about half an hour ago kind of skipping to other subjects. But in the end, what in the next 2 weeks is the Pico device going to be available or?
Yeah. We are just building up a body of Picos and expansion boards. Jeff, I think you said you were going to send or did send more already. I can't remember.
On the way, 15 more Pico boards and 5
Okay.
more expansion.
Okay, and I've got a pile of them, on my desk that are 90% ready. So there's an email list for this, and for folks on the email list who who helped us out by telling us that they were really interested. Those folks are going to get some emails a little bit later this evening saying, you can go pick what you want. And then it'll be available to everybody. Probably this week is my guess. Yeah.
I'm curious how many pre-orders you got. I mean, probably not that many, obviously, but or maybe
Capped
more than
it-
I'm thinking.
Capped it at 20 board commitments, but there was at least 2 people who said, I want one of this kind and one of that kind. So the actual number is 18. So 18
Oh, okay.
people, but 20 commitments across those 18 folks.
Wow, that's pretty good then.
Yeah, well,
That might be all you ever
more.
sell. Yeah, that might be all you ever sell, but well, I don't know.
No, I think that there's enough folks who want something besides tape that and it'll be available. Jeff's spotted some things that he wants to improve for a next iteration. So there'll be another respin, and depending upon what Ricardo and Gustavo come up with, there could be a further respin of the board.
I could definitely see something like that, or that setup going into the 2060 expansion unit.
Yeah,
being part of that, because that's
Bingo.
basically
We haven't
what
talked
that
about
was.
that yet this meeting.
Yeah, hit me up, Carl.
No, this is a good point because if we support a single board with the all resource there, we avoid conflicts between different devices. That will be great with the memory management unit, also storage or communication. If we can solve the issue in a single board plus an expansion in the back part, will be great, like a similar BEU, but
Right.
with the new points, no? Ethernet connectivity and another resources. That could be possible. The problem is the cost. Personally, not the imagination.
I don't know what you're
Yep.
talking about, Gustavo. I can make it as expensive as you want.
Yes, good point, Chef.
But you know, and I know me and Ryan have talked about it, and you know, how the internals would kind of lay out, and so we've got a bunch of ideas, you know, how the boards would be. You know, originally I was thinking just one big board would be in there, and you would have sockets for, you know, we had talked about putting another sound chip in there, but I'm thinking maybe breaking the main board into 3 sections. So if you only want a few things, then you only need to buy the first board, and the second board would plug into that one, and then the third board would plug into that one. So if you wanted the full width of the BEU unit to be all PC boards, and then, you know, but it really, we'll have to iron that out.
The problem with this architecture is the noise. If you put a board, the last board receive many noise and maybe have a problem. It's better if you put all the resources in a single board and connect this board to the computer. And another interesting question is, we can add more sound chips on there, but what software handle that?
Well, it'll be in parallel with the one that's already in the 2068, so we could get. I think the discussion was around stereo sound. So basically, you're not even using the one that's in the 2068, but they're connected together. So I mean, you're talking to both of them at the same time, right? So you're sending the same information to both of them. But the only problem you're going to have there is the speaker that's in the 2068. You'd have to be able to disconnect that, because then you would hear. Well, I don't know. I mean, you're going to hear the same thing, but you would ultimately be able to do stereo sound on the output of the back of the BEU, right? Instead of
I think it was
mono.
a alternative to try to do a stereo mod inside the computer. That you just tack on one that was already modded, basically. But I don't know how difficult like it would be to go in and at least put a switch or to kill the internal speaker. That's probably a lot easier to do.
Well,
Yeah, but you know, all the outputs are tied together. There's 3 outputs of the chip, and they're all tied together inside on the 2068 board. So
yeah, so the idea was you put one on an expansion that wasn't tied up, and you could configure it to the couple of stereo options.
Right, and it would talk to the same I/O ports, right? So you'd be using them in parallel. It's kind of a waste of resources, but.
And then that would go feed right into, say, like the display RGB out. That you could run that stereo sound into that connector too, right?
Yeah, and I hate to keep riding the FPGA hobby horse, but I mean, you could build a reasonably cost-effective expansion that would have, you know, full video and a sound chip emulator in the FPGA, along with you know, some other goodies, and that's, you know, essentially twice the size of your thumb.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they could all be emulated, and that chip's kind of getting harder to get physically, you know, the real chips nowadays. So, you know, that may be an option. That's why we kind of wanted to split the boards inside. I don't know if the RF noise is going to be a big issue there, because they're all going to be in one chassis. But it was just kind of a cost savings things, because like I said, maybe you don't need all that, or you want to wait for that later. So, you know, there would be maybe just 2 boards, but I was just thinking 3 for stuff like that. You could have extra ROMs in there, whatever. You know, it's kind of up to what we wanted to do. And there's also, we talked about riser boards, right? Because you have a limited height. So there would be riser boards on each end of the BEU that would have at least 1 slot, so you could put a fairly big size board on that, right? But how do you support it? Then we also talked about maybe making a tall BEU so that you could plug the cards in straight into expansion slots. All you would need to change is the top case, the top of the case, not the bottom.
Right.
The bottom would be the same. The top case would just be taller. You'd have a taller version, and then you would, be able to put cards in standing up. But there's no standard for cards for this thing. So,
Well,
everybody makes
that's
their own
what-
cards.
For example,
and that's one of the things I thought we should talk about in this is like, we could kind of call the shots on this, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, that would be for new stuff. We would. I kind
Sure.
of like the riser
Well-
cards because they would allow basically, I think, any card out there that exists right now would fit inside the BEU. At least 2 of them. So, or maybe the tall one uses the same risers. You just have more slots, right? You can have 4 slots on each one instead of just 1 or 2, right? That way you.
but for example, one of the new question is if necessary to support in the Centronic port. What do you think?
I
So-
don't. We talked about that, but I don't really think that is
I
in
don't see
today's
it as
day and age.
necessary.
Yeah, because
Well-
you'd have to have a Centronics printer, and most people don't. I mean,
How am I going to hook up my Okimate 20 if I don't have a
well,
Centronics?
I mean, in one
Well-
case that would be an expansion card. Maybe we could make a Centronics expansion
Yeah.
card.
Or my
You know,
parallel
what
port
I-
zip drive too.
Right.
That's what I figured.
Right.
Well, that's part of the decision making is that, that's not common enough, I think, to build in as one of the intended original features of the BEU,
Hmm.
but certainly could be done with a card.
Somebody
So-
made one that ran out of the dock port.
That's true. There was several, the footprint and somebody else. Ryan and Carl, will you be able to make the next meeting on the 4th at 9?
I should be able to. Yeah, I don't foresee any issues
Yep.
for me.
Okay. All right. Let's throw down. Everybody
Well,
bring your ideas.
Yeah, and if I can make a request, come up with a feature set first, and then we can talk about form factor, because
point.
one drives the other.
Well,
Yeah.
I kind of had that a little bit in that post I did a while back.
Yeah,
It was an attachment. It's mostly features.
All right.
And I
let's-
kind of think, the form factor is already kind of given to us. So we kind of, we're not designing something from scratch per se, where I would think that would be more, that would be more prudent. But now I think we've got kind of what we need, because I mean, in that 2060 document that David had, it's got the dimensions of the 2060 in it. So
So we've
yes,
got,
and,
we've got
another-
time and quality defined,
Yeah.
and now it's just money.
Yes. No, another idea, maybe it could be possible to expand the VEU or the new VEU in 3.3 volts, because all the new microprocessors or devices are 3.3 and never use 5 volts now.
Yeah.
right.
It-
But you
it's
but you'd
more
still
easy.
have to have some level translation there, because of course the 2068 is 5 volts, and that's never going to change.
Yep.
Yes, but we use a single voltage translation between the Timex and the SCLD or the FPGA in the actually, and then back to the FPGA, we continue with the 3.3.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I agree, and I like Carl's idea of bringing out the Timex expansion bus on the back of the BEU. And honestly, at my age, and with my neck and back, I'd like to have something tall enough to raise the monitor up. So
Okay.
Listen, gentlemen, it's been good. December 4th. And I'll Ryan, I'm gonna dig up your document and send it out as part of the invite for the meeting on Monday, so that we all have some, some feature set to at least start arguing from.
Everyone's going
Yeah,
to play politely.
Right, exactly. All right. Go do something else.
Okay.
All right,
you.
guys.
thank you
Have a
all,
good one.
guys.
See you
Bye.
all. Bye bye.